Okay, folks, welcome back to Shadowlands. Going to talk about Survival Hunter. Going to show you the range setup that I have. Otherwise known as I've been calling it the Demon Hunter mode. You get to do a little bit of jumping forwards and backwards. I've done a little bit of everything. I've done some LFR ratings, some mythics, up to mythic +4. I did a fair amount on my hunter in Mechagon. Or I should say I did a fair amount on my hunter in Mechagon. Mostly it's marksmanship. Decided for 9.1 I wanted to start playing my hunter again. Started out as marksmanship. That got kind of repetitive, I guess you could say. Swapped over to Beast Mastery. Just wasn't getting into Beast Mastery. Switched back to marksmanship. Decided to look at survival at one point. I've talked about survival ever since Battle for Azeroth Beta. And I've said the same thing. I've come to the same conclusion, that it didn't know what it wanted to be. And it still kind of doesn't. However, it's better now than it was. So I switched over to survival and saw where you had ranged abilities again. And as far as I can figure, so I kind of got excited. Started looking at the rest of the spells and everything, and came to the conclusion that, as with several classes now, I'm guessing they gave them to you for when you first create the character to help you level, and then as you get closer to max level, you get more of the abilities that you need to play your class as intended, or as it should be. So my idea was, could you, in the way that you might play Unholy Death Knight, could you kind of make a range setup? And as I said, I've actually done quite well. I've actually came in like second or third in doing dungeons. Been doing mythic +2, +3, +4. I think that's kind of the range where the casual players, I'll say, tend to hang out for the most part. +5 and up, you're grinding for something usually. Gets a little more, the difficulty increases, gets a little more serious at that point. So if we look at our abilities for you to understand the rotation and everything, nothing new. They haven't really added anything since the barbed shot, rapid fire that they gave Beast Mastery in one of the last patches in Battle for Azeroth. So yeah. So I'm not using any of the melee abilities. That's all the melee abilities. And for some reason, muzzle, which doesn't entirely make a whole lot of sense. We can use a crossbow for things like Serpent Sting. Rogue uses a pistol for, I believe it's pistol shot. But we apparently cannot figure this out for muzzle. Muzzle is a melee ability. Now, when you switch over to one of the other specs, it is a ranged ability. I can actually show you here if I find it. It's not going to show me, is it? Am I just not seeing it, or because I double checked and now it's not going to show it, and it's going to make me look foolish. But yes, you can switch over yourself and see this becomes a range interrupt. So okay, that seems a bit bizarre. Um, so Aspect of the Eagle, which they have taken out and brought back, taken out and brought back, increases the range of Raptor Strike. I do not remember what this did originally. It was potentially before my time. I think it was. I know they changed a lot of things during Cataclysm, so I think it was probably before my time. Or if it was in the game, I don't remember, because I do remember Hunter had a completely different setup. You had Nature Shot, and you actually had to have Hunter's Mark on the target because it increased damage, and it just everything worked differently. They still used Focus. They had just started. I think they were still fairly new to Focus. All the mana burns and everything like that were gone by the time I started. So I'm not 100% sure what this did. I don't remember it being a vital ability. I remember it being more of a utility. I know I have seen this. There were several different aspects that were, did a variety of things. Kind of like Shaman and their totems. Some of them were more useful to your roll or rotation. Others were just kind of utilities that had niche uses here and there. Harpoon, again, for some reason, is a melee ability, even though it pulls you to the target from at range. Cleave makes sense. Raptor Strike makes sense. Don't get me wrong, you are losing a fair amount of damage. However, for someone who's not doing like Mythic Plus rating or trying to do like plus 20 Mythic Dungeon keys, you'll most likely probably be fine. I have gotten some interesting. I've gotten some comments in Mythic Dungeons. However, as I said, I've been on the top end of the DPS, so nobody's really said anything. Much more than why are you playing it at range, and that's pretty much been it. So, and kill shot for some reason. Why kill shot is, it literally says shot in the name. I can kind of see. There are finishing abilities that are range and melee, so okay, it kind of makes sense, kind of works in with the theme, but muzzle really kind of threw me, and I didn't realize this until I tried to use it and couldn't. So with this setup, you kind of have to take everything, because most of the abilities work with the idea that you're playing this at melee range, or you're playing it as a melee spec. If we look at the talents, there's not a lot of choices. So Alpha Predator, Kill Command is the only thing that really generates focus that you have baseline. You can pick other things up from your talents, but Kill Command is it. So Kill Command has 2 charges and deals increased damage, so that, of course, is pretty good. Terms of engagement, we're not using Harpoon. We're not using Raptor Strike. I had Guerrilla Tactics, so that Wild Firebomb had 2 charges. It does pretty good initial damage, about half of its overtime damage, and then does a ton more in overtime damage. However, it does not spread, for one. I thought it did. Explosive in a cone. Oh, and coats enemies in Wildfire Bomb. So it does. Yeah, there we go. So this seemed like the more appropriate choice, or more natural choice to double down on. However, you have no AoE. You have no multi-shot, because that was Cleave, essentially. So to remedy that, I took Hydrospite, which I had played around with before in the beta for Battle for Azeroth. So it has kind of a cleave effect, where it will fire an arrow to. It basically does what multi-shot does. Multi-shot hits 3 targets. This, in effect, will hit 3 targets. So you can just kind of tab target to make sure everyone has it on there. Doesn't do as much initial damage. Does more overtime damage. This has actually been my highest damage ability in some dungeons after it's over. So as long as you can keep this up, it doesn't cost too terribly much in focus. So this worked better. I really was torn because I prefer guerrilla tactics. I prefer Wildfire Bomb. It has a cooldown. Serpent Sting does not. I believe there was another iteration of Serpent Sting back in the day. I think it still did nature damage, though, if I remember correctly. I just don't think it had like the poison tip flavor text and all that. Not using cleave. Butchery just makes cleave. I don't know. I want to say a little better. Yeah, it just makes it a little better. It just changes it into something else. I took camouflage just because I like using camouflage. Natural mending was probably your better choice here, so it you can keep your self heal on off cooldown. Trailblazer would also be helpful in the right circumstances. I just prefer camouflage, so entirely kind of preferential here. The 1 second, there's different abilities in the game. Mage has one that has a talent that has a reduces the cooldown by 1 second. It does and doesn't make a big difference. It's not like this is a life and death situation in the game. If it was 2 seconds or anything higher than that, you could kind of say this was the better option. You're playing inoptimally. You're not playing optimally. There we go. So it sounds more like a correct sentence. If you're not taking this, it's just 1 second. Camouflage actually comes in quite useful in Mythic dungeons, especially if you end up dying and you're trying to get back to the group. Bloodseeker, again, works with Kill Command. Gives it a damage over time effect. Steel Trap, I don't need another trap. I don't use the ones I have all that much. Murder of Crows is usually what I'll take regardless of what I'm doing. It's generally thought of as a PvP talent for a very good reason. You could use this in Mythic dungeons or Raids. You would probably be made to change it in Raids. So Bloodseeker works just as fine. If you were... There have been brief periods where you could be more trap-oriented. If you were trying to do something more like that, and you wanted a little bit of extra damage, it does have a bleed effect built in. However, damage interrupts the effect. And I don't like abilities where damage interrupts the effect. So, Bloodseeker worked perfectly well. You have the strongest version of Kill Command in Survival, probably once you take all the talents and everything that works with it. Born to be Wild reduces the cooldown of all your aspects. So aspect of the cheetah, which reduces damage, or turtle, excuse me, aspect of the turtle, which reduces damage, aspect of the cheetah, which increases speed. I also have a Soulbind that works with cheetah, so Born to be Wild does several things. Post haste could be good in dungeons or raids. It's kind of a niche use. Um, this is more of a PvP ability. Blinding Shot, same thing. I've taken this. I've never used it. It's been baseline. I've never used it. So Born to be Wild is just a passive that increases abilities I already have, and that's what I prefer to do when I can. Then I'm actually going to skip over this one and go to the last one here. Chakrams was not my necessarily my preferred choice here. Wild Bomb Infusion was what I had at one point when I had Guerrilla Tactics. It just gives it a little bit of an extra effect. It rotates. So if you have 2 charges, every time you use it, it'll have one of these 3 effects. Birds of Prey just helped the duration of Raptor Strike and Cleave. Or extends their... Yeah, works with those and Coordinated Assault, which we're not using either one of those abilities, so this does nothing. Wildfire Infusion doesn't do as much when you only have 1 charge. So Chakrams works perfectly fine, does damage as it is going to the target, to anything in between you and the target, and then on its way back. So, and I actually have 2 because that is what the ability is, the class ability is for Necrolords. So I could maybe see taking this. You kind of need something as filler, so between what I have, they kind of work as filler. And then the last one, Flanking Strike. So this changes how the whole thing works already. It's the only thing to take that doesn't involve melee for whatever reason. Doesn't involve any type of melee ability. Mongoose Bite changes Raptor Strike, of course. This used to be baseline when they first changed survival to being melee. A melee class, I'm pretty sure. If not, it's always been a talent. And then Tip of the Spear, again, works with Raptor Strike, which we're not using. So by default, Flanking Strike was what was left to take. And I was kind of disappointed because you do have to be in melee range because it only has 15-yard range. It does good damage, physical damage, which is usually pretty good in the game. Generates focus. Took a while to kind of figure out how to work this into the rotation. So typically, what I will do is for mobs, I will use Wildfire Bomb, Chakrams, and then spam Serpent Sting, or vice versa. Start out with Serpent Sting, and then use Wildfire Bomb and Chakrams. These both have a cooldown, so if you can get those first, the cooldown will be ticking away while you're using Serpent Sting. And then just Arcane Shot, basically. Arcane Shot and Kill Command to keep your focus up. And then on boss fights, I will use Coordinated Assault. I'll usually pop my Trinket, which gives me versatility. Coordinated Assault, and then usually, I was going to say, I think Death Chakrams, and then I will mainly focus on Kill Command and Arcane Shot, because this gives Kill Command a 25% chance to reset. Kill Command has a built-in 25% chance to reset, so it's about a 50% chance. So you can do quite a bit of damage and get focus quite easily, so you don't want to be wasting it. That was kind of where I started, was figuring this out. And then just use Wildfire Bomb and Chakrams as they are off cooldown. And then when you, um, at some point, when you notice your focus is low, which will happen quite often enough if you spam Arcane Shot, um, then you can get just close enough where you can use Flanking Strike, which will leap you forward, and then you can use Disengage to back out because you generally don't want to be in melee range. And that was kind of the Demon Hunter effect. So it actually works out quite well once you play enough to figure out kind of what everything does. I don't use our steady shots very often, if ever. It's just primarily these 6. And then whatever my pet's ability is. My Wasp just happens to be hero. If I have Survival of the Fittest, I'll typically use that more often. Don't really hardly ever use Master's Call because they don't ever actually get entangled in anything. And that is more or less pretty much it. Keep my shield will increase my agility. So I will try to keep that up. I will use Death Chakrams when they're off cooldown, which bounces around. And other than that, if we were to look at the Soulbinds, so I had to go unlock this guy. If you do this, you'll get the Plague Deviser and the Bonesmith, but the Abomination you will have to unlock. So that was kind of the setup I was using. A lot of it wants you to use or works with a lot of your melee abilities. So there's not a lot that I've seen, disappointingly enough, that actually works with your utility abilities and things like that. That's why I probably have the fewest of the fewest conduits of my max level characters. However, the ones I have, it's starting to somewhat improve. So that's pretty much what I have. Everyone's getting this condensed anima sphere if you do the world boss in the mall. Being able to cast Fleshcraft while moving has been handy. This was the conduit I was talking about. Aspect of the cheetah secondary movement speed lasts an additional 3 seconds, and its cooldown is reduced by 21 seconds, which is pretty nice. So it's on a 2.1 minute cooldown. So every little bit helps. I tend to use it quite often, as I said, especially in Mythics. If you die trying to get back to your group, taking fall damage. The lost health becomes a shield. Seemed the better of the two. I don't have a reason to have another Hearthstone right now. If you were doing something, I'm sure somebody will find use for this. It's a really good ability. I just don't have any use for it. Your self-heal heals for an additional percent of your maximum health over time. And then this is where we get into kind of just filling something. When Feign Death ends, you take less damage. So this was more for like when I've been going to the world boss in the mall. Sometimes camouflage works, sometimes it doesn't. For some reason, I don't know if it's glitch. So there have been times where I've had to feign death, and then use it to get there without dying. So I put that in here more with that in mind. increases haste, which will increase your focus regeneration. Kill command's cooldown is reset, gain increased damage. The cycling buff that you may or may not have noticed there, you may have noticed, absorbs magic damage while above 90% health, which wasn't overly helpful. But this one seemed a bit... the standing still wasn't so bad. I've had a legendary that had this effect, and it was actually quite useful. It's just movement speed's just kind of such an arbitrary thing. This actually reduces magical damage, so I figured take something... this was kind of one of those, we'll take it and see what happens. Take something different. It's not a bad ability at all. For the amount that it will absorb, it very well could absorb an entire ability from a rare or a mini-boss, or even a dungeon boss. And then disengage slows nearby enemies' movement speed. So I just put this in here because I'm using disengage more than I normally do. And then the last one, I haven't unlocked the last 3 yet. Taking damage or healing deals nature damage to nearby enemies and heals nearby allies. So there you go. I have no choice in that. That's just kind of what they were. And then I'll show you the Plague Advisor 2. Nothing. The Venthyr seem to have the better soul bind effects that I seem to like. Like I said, that said, like I've worked on this at a certain point because I thought there were so many of the conduit slots that I had just empty. You would think you would need something in there for it to work, for it to complete and go to the next ability, but or the next effect, whatever it may be, next passive. But no, so I just had empty slots. I thought, well, that's so wasteful. And every time I kept looking at something, it was either for a different spec or it worked with a melee weapon. So it wasn't overly helpful. I think at a certain point I even went and started looking at through dungeon bosses for conduits just to see if there's anything worth trying to grind for as I was doing mythics. It's also worth mentioning. So your mastery actually benefits you here because it increases the damage of your focus spending abilities, which is most everything. And while your pet is active, you regenerate health. So I actually kind of worked on increasing my mastery a bit, and it's been around 20-some%. As far as I can remember, I think at the lowest it might have been in the low teens, like 19%, or yeah, the high teens. Excuse me, about 19%. If that, I had a character that did. I don't remember if it was this one specifically. So it's not. So with that, you can kind of my thinking was when I realized that this was kind of working because I kind of had I kind of had the thought that this would be fun for to play around with. You do a couple dungeon stuff, kind of figure out it really didn't work, or it didn't work that well, and then I would figure something else out, go back to marksmanship, what have you. Then when I actually figured out it was actually working, I've out DPS'd Demon Hunter. I have out DPS'd a Druid that I want to say was in Boonkin. that was a boonkin, so he was balanced. I've been finishing like second or third on bosses, so not too bad. Like I said, people have kind of asked when they've noticed why I'm playing range as survival. Um, and you are losing a little bit of damage. However, just for something uh, fun to do, um, this is just what I've been doing, and it seems to work perfectly fine. Now in raids, when I've done LFR, as you can see, I've got Sylvanas' quiver from LFR. I was in the mid-teens. I was usually about round 15 in damage in a group of 25 people, which is not terrible. It's not great. It's just kind of, it is what it is. My gear was not this good. My item level was a lot lower, so that could be part of it. Other than that, I got really lucky on this character with things. I got a really good trinket, which increased Fleshcraft, because that is my signature ability, the cooldown on that. Different things. I've been lucky to get gear to drop in mythic dungeons and things like that with the Great Vault reward, the once a week reward. The other thing that I had an issue with, or if I had a complaint, when I first got to max level, focus was a problem. My haste was low. It's been all over the place for some reason with the gear I've been getting. So it's been in the lower teens, and then it's been below 10%, like 9, 8 in there, maybe 7 at one point. So it's been low. It's been a little higher. I think 10% is about a good baseline. So what I did was actually went through and leveled engineering to craft my enchant, and that seemed to take care of the problem. So let me see here. Where are scopes? There we go. So this increases haste by 303 for 12 seconds. So it's not terrible. And I think the other one does critical strike. Yeah. So it is not terrible here. Let's see if I can get it to show you. But that seemed to take care of the problem. I took the Soulbind talent you saw, just have taken haste whenever I could. Come on. It was kind of bad at the beginning, though. And the thing is, with it being a passive ability, you don't even notice it. I have to watch at times if I'm using coordinated assaults and spamming. There we go. So as you see, it goes up to 19%. 302. You can see it's generating pretty quickly there. So on top of using kill command and everything, that seemed to do perfectly fine. And then what was the Soulbind? Where was it here? Gain 3% haste for 10 seconds after defeating an enemy. So you can imagine in a dungeon, up to 15%. So you can imagine in a dungeon where you're the mobs and everything. And I think that was pretty much it. I've had Leech for some reason. I haven't had too difficult of a time. Once I took once I took some of the Soulbind passives that helped my self heal, got some better gear, um, tried to keep Fleshcraft active, which I think I may have misspoke. Yeah, I think Fleshcraft's passive effect consumes a completely granting a benefit to the no. Am I prevents damage, taking damage? So it might have been that might have been it. I was going to say there was when I said it increases agility, I was pretty sure it was with the first Soulbind I had. And I think that was right. So I don't think it does it any more. I think it was the first passive there. So yeah, so there you go. Yeah, like I said, been fairly lucky with gear and everything. Um, haven't had too difficult of a time. Actually, did one mythic dungeon with one person who had just DC'd for the whole thing, and did perfectly fine. That was, in fairness, probably credit to the others as well. It was everybody's been over geared now for a lot of the lower ones that I've been doing in large part. Um, and once you know the dungeons, they're really not all that difficult. I don't think it was for like a weekly quest. I think I was just doing it to get the vault reward for that week. Um, so yeah, so there you go, folks. That was my setup for a range survival hunter. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was helpful for you, and thank you for watching.